Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment, and that's going to be Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio. Thanks for being here, Andy.
Yeah, great to be on.
Awesome. So talking Zoom video, this has been pummeled since reaching those all-time highs at the beginning, or just about 9-10 months ago in here. But if you look at this stock over a 3-year period from prior to the pandemic to now, it's still up over 80% from those levels. Yeah, we got overbought. But are you seeing any data out of LikeFolio that's stating, hey, that they still have traction, they still have user growth in this particular video conferencing? Because I don't use it anymore. I'm in the office every day, and I just don't use it anymore. Are you seeing good trends or bad trends here?
It's a little bit of a mix, and you bring up a really good point. There's a massive difference between looking at Zoom adoption or Zoom stock price on a long-term time frame where it looks really good, or if you look at it from a shorter-term time frame where it looks like everybody's abandoning ship. And really, there's a mix of two things going on here. First of all, from a macro trend perspective, Zoom's in the right spot. The hybrid workplace is very, very real, and people need these solutions to be able to communicate with their coworkers and sometimes with family members in ways that they didn't even think about as recently as 2019. You can see hybrid workplace mentions. This is people setting up a hybrid workplace, up 340%, even as people return to the office in pretty large numbers. So the macro tailwind is there for Zoom. Now, on the other hand, so is the competition. This is a company that benefited greatly at the very beginning of the pandemic because it was kind of the only real provider or the fastest provider that people could get started up. And so it was the default choice for most people. But now, as we get into the hybrid workplace, as we settle into kind of this new normal, people are evaluating their options, and features from Slack, the consistency of GoToMeeting, and even some competition from Teams is starting to eat into Zoom's market share and in a really big way. And so while Zoom has clearly benefited from what occurred over the last couple of years on a long-term time frame, accelerated adoption in an unbelievable way, it also accelerated the amount of competition that's coming into the marketplace. And in a lot of cases, consumers are happier with the way that competitors are offering the services than Zoom. So we do see some significant attrition and think that Zoom is probably losing market share in a pretty meaningful way.
Yeah, the good news, Andy, is that they're the leader in this space, but boy, some of the names of people that are also in the game, like Microsoft Teams and Slack, which is now owned by Salesforce, these are real competitors that are coming to play hardball. And even though some of the numbers here are pretty good from Slack in terms of 2022 growth, fiscal 2022, I should say, was around 55%. They expect that in fiscal 23 to slow down. But, I like the fact that I'm reading that they're throwing a bunch of new products like Zoom Phone and Zoom Contact Center, a bunch of products out there, and they still seem to be in the game. And boy, this stock has just come down so far. Andy, if you could pick one name that is their biggest competitor, or the one that, objects in the rearview mirror are closer than they appear, which one of these companies? Is it Microsoft Teams? Is it Slack? Is it GoToMeeting? Which one is it that's gaining on them that we should keep our eye on?
Yeah, I really think it's Slack. I think that Slack's tools make it a natural choice to kind of just let the Zoom contract expire, at least for small businesses. I think what's the knowns out there, the Microsoft Teams is pretty well known. They have enormous enterprise contracts that we're going to win at the end of the day. But if you look at this chart, I think it's really interesting. On the left, you can see Zoom in the blue had 64%, mention market share, LikeFolio's version of market share, 64% a year ago. That's fallen down to 57%, and we've really seen Slack be the reason that's eating into most of that, up from 16% on the left there in orange to 24% on the right. And that tells me that Slack is kind of that all-in-one collaboration tool is really working. And Salesforce's history of having very successful integrations and acquisitions is another reason that I'm pretty bullish on that as the competitor that Zoom should be watching out for.
Yeah, and Andy, I was going to kind of hit on that chart too that you had there, because I'm pretty surprised that Teams hasn't been picking up out of Microsoft, hasn't been picking up any steam, and it's all been Slack. Now, Teams came out after Slack. Slack was first adopter in that particular space. But do you bet against, Teams digging more into what Zoom Video has and even Slack moving forward? Because just the integration between all the systems that people use and businesses use because they're on Microsoft Office already, that this is only going to improve, and that's going to put more pressure on Zoom Video.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if we're talking a year from now and that blue section of the chart of the ring is down well below 50% for Zoom because of both Slack and Microsoft Teams. They both have just more robust, full collaboration tools where what Zoom is to people becomes just a feature inside of their platforms. And they have that reach because of Salesforce and Microsoft Enterprise contracts to really do some damage. So I think Zoom was the easy choice out of the gate, but it might turn out to be some really cheap early speed to get into the kind of the Kentucky Derby parlance here. As we go forward, I think Zoom's in a little bit of trouble. But again, there's room for multiple winners. This is a rapidly growing industry with a lot of tailwinds. So just because Zoom's losing market share doesn't mean it doesn't have significant growth in its future.
Yeah, Andy, and as I mentioned before, it's off 80% from its all-time highs above $588, but it's still up pretty significantly from 3 years ago, prior to the pandemic, when everything got pulled forward and really helped this company. But they don't have earnings for at least a month and a half until the end of May, early June. You don't have an earnings score here, but is the sentiment enough to be positive, or where would you be on this one out of LikeFolio?
No, if anything, we would lean bearish on this. I think if there was an earnings score today, it would be slightly negative, but trending the wrong direction. And so we'll see as we get into May. But as of now, I think the pain for Zoom shareholders probably is not over.
Yeah, and we saw the stock trade below $95 a share just last month. All right, thanks. Thanks for all the info and the content here, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that's Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio, breaking down Zoom Video for us.